Have you ever wondered why one country is a democracy and another is a dictatorship? Well, it really all boils down to the rules of the game. So think of this explainer as your ultimate review guide, the go-to cheat sheet for understanding the political rulebooks that shape our entire world.
You know, every country has to make these huge choices. Who gets the power? How do we even count the votes? And the answers to those questions, they shape everything from your personal freedoms to whether a nation is stable or not. So let's dive in and see how these rule books actually get written.
All right, first up, the most fundamental choice of all. Who holds the power? This single question is what creates the massive divide between two totally different ways of running a country.
So on one side of the coin, you've got authoritarian regimes. This is where power is held tight in the hands of a very small group, and they don't really need permission from the people they rule. A classic example is China, right? The Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP, has total control, and what citizens can do or say is, well, it's very, very limited.
And then you've got the flip side, democratic regimes. In these systems, the power ultimately belongs to the people, and they use that power through elections. Your individual rights are supposed to be protected, and the government has to answer to you, the citizen. The United Kingdom is a great example of this in action.
So how do we actually track a country's shift from authoritarian to democratic? This whole process is called democratization, and political scientists basically have a checklist. They look for these 7 signs. But here's the thing, it's not a simple on or off switch. You've got countries like Mexico and Nigeria that have made some real strides, especially with competitive elections. But then you have a place like Russia. They hold elections, sure, but there's no real competition. It's what some people call an illiberal democracy. It kind of looks like one on the outside, but it's missing the most important parts on the inside.
Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit, because this next part is absolutely crucial in a democracy. How do the votes that people cast actually turn into real power? The rules for this are, believe me, a really big deal.
So there are 2 main ways to do it. First is the winner-take-all system. The country gets carved up into districts, and in each district, whoever gets the most votes wins. Simple. This usually leads to a stable 2-party system. The other model is all about power sharing, which is called proportional representation. Here, you vote for a party and they get a number of seats that matches their percentage of the national vote. It's amazing how this one little rule change is the reason some countries have tons of parties and others really only have 2.
So let's see how this plays out in the real world. The UK and Nigeria, they both use that winner-take-all system. But then look at Mexico and Russia. They actually use a mixed system, combining a bit of both. The idea there is to try and get the best of both worlds, right? You get a local representative you can hold accountable, but you also get a wider range of parties in the legislature.
Now, voting is one thing, but what about between elections? How do people make sure their voices are heard then? Well, they organize into groups to fight for their interests. And how the government deals with these groups, that's another major rule of the political game.
And this brings us to 2 totally opposite models. In a pluralist system, like the one in the UK, the key word is competition. You have all these different, independent groups all competing for the government's attention. The state doesn't really pick favorites. But in a corporatist system, the key word is control. The government basically sanctions certain groups, say the official union or the official business group, and gives them a seat at the table while locking everyone else out. Russia is a perfect example of this state-controlled system.
And what's so fascinating is that these systems aren't permanent. They can change. Just look at Mexico's story. It's the perfect example. For decades, it was a classic corporatist state, where one ruling party controlled all the major interest groups. But starting in the 2000s, as Mexico became more democratic, it started shifting, moving slowly toward a more open, competitive, pluralist system. It's a journey they're still on today.
Okay, so we've talked about regimes, how we vote, and how interest groups work. Now let's pull all those threads together and look at the big picture of how these huge political changes actually happen. You know, there's this really famous idea from a political scientist named Samuel Huntington. He said that democratization tends to happen in waves. He called the one that started back in the 70s the third wave, and it saw dictatorships falling all over the world. Understanding this helps put the changes we see in countries like Mexico into a much larger global story.
And here we are. This slide brings it all together. This is your ultimate cheat sheet. Just look at the patterns here. You see democracies like the UK with their competitive elections and pluralist systems. Then you see authoritarian states like Russia and China with total state control over parties and interest groups. And right in the middle, you have these emerging democracies like Mexico and Nigeria, which are kind of a mix, still facing huge challenges on their path.
But there's one more piece to this puzzle, and it's absolutely critical. As countries try to become more democratic, you need an independent judiciary. You need courts that are free from political pressure. Why? Because they're the ones who uphold the rule of law, protect our rights, and stop something called democratic backsliding, which is when a country starts losing those democratic habits. The judiciary is, without a doubt, the guardian of the whole system.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from all of this. Democratization, it's not a finish line you cross. It's not a destination. It's a constant, ongoing process. Progress can be made, for sure, but it can also stall out or even go backward. It takes non-stop work to keep it going.
So the big question, as we look to the future, is what's next? What forces, whether they're economic, social, maybe even technological, are going to set off the next big global wave of change? And will that wave be one that pushes more countries towards democracy? Or will we see more countries pulling back? That's the question we're left with. Thanks for watching.